Problems that have many, many aspects, multiple layers, levels of complexity, are interrelated, have an exposure to a variety of different groups, are often referred to as wicked problems. Education, the discipline of education, whether it is in the K-12 system, higher ed, corporate training, or any other aspect of the world of instruction, presents many wicked problems because of the diversity of the organizations, the approaches, the people involved. But the exciting thing about wicked problems in education is that if you can learn how to address them, you can come up with wicked solutions, which means that you can actually come up with solutions and innovations that will make a significant difference in a lot of people's lives. And so in this learner's mindset discussion, we're going to be exploring the notion of these big problems that present big opportunities for growth and big opportunities to change the world, one learner at a time. Well, I want to welcome you all to another Learner's Mindset discussion. I'm Dr. Dwayne Hrapnick, and my esteemed colleague is
Dr. Sue Bedard.
Today, we're going to be exploring a really important issue for some key students in the ADL program, but I would argue a key issue for most people. And that is shifting your mindset and adopting a learner's mindset that enables you to take a look at challenges, shifts, diversions as opportunities for growth as opposed to obstacles, right? And so we live in a world that is so used to a simple linear progression. Things work this way. And if something goes out of step, it causes problems. And as we've seen with COVID, something like a pandemic actually reveals a lot of problems that we have within our system. And we've been noticing this well before COVID, and we've been working with our students previously in the digital learning and leading program, but now our new students in the applied digital learning program. And the reason that this is so important, it isn't just for our students. I would argue it's for people everywhere. You have to become adaptable, flexible. You have to be willing to look for innovative ways to deal with circumstances. And when life gives you lemons, that proverbial saying, you have to figure out, hey, lemonade's not too bad, but you have to actually be willing to make the lemonade. So this is where we're going to go today. We're going to be talking about critical analytical thinking. We're going to be talking about the growth mindset, the learner's mindset. We're going to be talking about problem solving, analysis, all that good stuff. But it's the focus of this discussion, I think, is really going to come down to if there's a problem that needs to be solved, if you have the right mindset, a solution is at hand, but it's not going to be a simple, quick, or easy fix. If a problem you're facing has people involved, it has a system involved, like a school system or your HR department or your training department or whatever. If you've got people and another system involved, you've got a complex system. Simple solutions just don't work. And so today, I hope we can sort of help people see how they can move beyond that quick fix or that simple solution perspective. What are your thoughts on this before we dive into the issues and try to come up with a resolution?
Yeah, sure thing. So a while back, I had this proposal, and it was about wicked problems in education. And it actually ties into exactly what we're doing here. The wicked problem really means that there are multiple organizations, groups, or whatever that are trying to solve a problem, and they don't ever agree. So the problem never moves to a solution. It never gets tried. Things never happen. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And education is one of those wicked problems, because you've got your teachers, your admins, your district level, your politicians, your parents, your students, and they all want to do it a different way. And their ways are all right. However, if we start thinking about the bigger picture and what the goal is, then I think the shift in the mindset, the opportunity that presents, can probably have some form of a solution.
Wow, wicked problem. I actually do recall that terminology. And I think even the
This
people in
year.
the Horizon reports were using that a few years ago. And I forgot about that, but
That's
you're so
that's
right.
exactly where I gave the presentation
Yeah,
at
that, so
the new media consortium.
yeah, New Media
Yeah.
Consortium. Yeah, so you're talking about complex, multi-layered problems that are not solvable in a quick, short period of time, but they take multiple layers and they take a lot of thought, and you have to look at many, many factors, right? And I I believe that we have many, many more wicked problems than we do have simple problems. Just look at the
We
world
did.
around us, right? And so this need for us to help people prepare their mindset, to change their thinking about learning, to help them look at their approaches to learning differently, and then to look at the learning environment and how that plays a role. And that's what we refer to as a learner's mindset. So helping people move into that learner's mindset is one way that you can look at these wicked problems as opportunities,
Mhm.
because a wicked problem always presents a myriad of opportunities. And for those people who can present the opportunities, it can make a significant difference in many people's lives. So wicked problems. So at the start of our ADL program, we are asking our students to identify a wicked problem in their
Yes, we are.
organization and to come up with a plan. And most people have a hard time doing that, right? They might see a problem, but they immediately go to, oh, okay, well, people aren't getting along. Well, I know what, we're going to use social emotional learning. We'll read this book, we'll watch this video, problem solved, right? Or you're in a training scenario, you can't get engagement, people aren't interested, they don't really, the data is showing they don't really retain anything after the training sessions. I know what, we'll apply digital badges. Yeah, everybody gets a digital badge. Problem solved, right? Yeah, I want my students to be able to communicate with each other and to make those meaningful connections in the world, and we're going to implement an e-portfolio. Well, to do that, we just use Google Sites. As soon as we deploy Google Sites, problem solved, right? And so there's this tendency for many people to look at these quick fix solutions or these
Or
simplistic
singular,
solutions. Yeah,
singular solution.
singular. What I've been noticing too is that there's this notion of a treatment in education, right? When you've got remedial activities, you do a treatment, right? So people in education are adopting almost medical or scientific terms, right? You do a treatment, or you control this variable and you make a change in one variable and poof, problem solved. But again, there's that complexity that they're ignoring. So that's an issue that a lot of our students are facing. But another issue that they're facing, and we talked about this earlier, is that while they're in the program, they have another wicked problem. How the heck did that stupid Blackboard work? You've got this instructor who has deadlines. Well, where are the deadlines? And you've got weeks 1 to 3, 2 to 5. Do you overlap those weeks? They're used to being told this is linear, check off these boxes, build a bunch of stuff, put on the shelf, go into the next course. And they're exposed to an environment where you and I are going to say, guess what? You're going to be working on this problem for the next year or two. What? That's a scary problem that you're going to have to work on for a long period of time. And that wicked problem is compounded by the fact that quite often they've been so used to being told, well, this is how we log on to Canvas, or this is how we log on to Blackboard, or this is how we log on to Moodle. You're going to see this in this column, and you click on that button first. And they come to your or my first meeting, and we're going, whoa, hey, let's look at the big picture. And they're going, oh my God, I can't see the big picture because all I can see is this Blackboard thing in my way, and I got to get around that. But how do we help students with that without sort of reverting back to that old system of leading them and spoon feeding them? And what are your thoughts? I know, we always labor over this. This is not a new discussion. Like how many times have we had this one, right?
Right. I think part of learning online, you have to do that in a different way than if you were in the traditional physical classroom. And one of the reasons is you have 1 hour of class, so to speak, and then all the rest of your time is on your own. So you have to become the one in charge of the learning. Like, what do I need to know? How do I need to find it out? Where am I going to go? and be independent of that, or form some peers and have a pair try to figure that out. But you have to take more ownership of those things, the building blocks of the environment. Once you have the environment under control, now the learning will take place of where we're going to move in this program and how we're going to come up with this wicked problem and how we're going to present solutions and who we're going to talk to. But it all boils back, I think, to the ownership that you have to do your work. If that is reading, if that is watching video, if that is just click, 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 and reading and clicking and reading and clicking until you get familiar, you have to do that. Can there be a question or two that you don't quite understand? Sure. But when you hit that online, like I watch my kids, my grandkids, I watch them, I want to learn how to play the guitar. Okay, well, let's go get some lessons. No, I want to do it on my own. Okay, let me know how it goes. They go to YouTube, they find something that shows them how to hold the guitar, how to strum. And the next thing I know, I'm hearing what I think is the song coming out of the room. It's a little off, but I'm recognizing it. The next thing I know, she's figured out how to find the instruction that she needs at that time to learn what she wants to learn. I think that's where we're heading. And we have to move from when I was in parochial school, sitting in rows of 5 deep, 5 across, and you didn't move out of the width of your desk for fear the ruler would come, right? We have to move out of that. They told you when to go to the bathroom, when to wash your hands, when to write a letter, when to look up, when to sit down. We have to move away from that. Our world is 24/7. We have ping pong balls bouncing everywhere. And really, that's kind of how our program, our project is working. So we've got to be able to shift a little bit. And each month, each course, I hear students say it gets a little easier. You have to trust the process. And I think that's kind of where you need to start out the gate. I will not know everything. I will fail sometimes. I will go back and redo, right? So if we have those thoughts of failure is okay, and what do I do with it when it happens? I think that will help a whole lot right at the beginning of this program.
I couldn't agree with you more. And when you're talking about all those things, I'm immediately thinking about, well, what do I say in my first couple of meetings? How do I handle? What do I send my students to look at first? And I know in the meeting the other day, I said, guess what? My job is not to evaluate whether or not you're right or wrong. My job is to help you be successful. And in this innovation course, I'm going to help you come up with your innovation plan. And if that means you have to redo parts of it multiple times, that's okay, right? That is going to be okay, because that just might be the case that's part of the process. Changing that, revising multiple iterations is okay. And you're not going to be penalized for that. And so it
right there, penalized.
Yeah.
Because I want an A. But what if I have to redo it? Do I get an F? And does it get to be an A? Like, we have to change that mindset as well.
Well, that speaks to the notion of changing their thinking about learning, right? For the most part, students don't actually think about learning. They think about, how do I get that A? What do I need to give my teacher? What do I need to give my prof to get that A? Right. So it's really about figuring out what they need. And I think that this also presents another challenge when you're dealing with these wicked problems. Your person that is helping you as an instructor, coaching and guiding often is just there to help you solve your wicked problem, and we're not the audience. And so that's another challenge that a lot of our learners have, is that, if they're going to be putting together a makerspace or a robotics club proposal or whatever the proposal is, there might be a curriculum committee, there might be a management team, there might be a design team in their training center, right? If they're in a corporation, well, guess what? They have to write that proposal for that audience. There's probably some administrator, somebody in a management position that they're going to have to, check with as well. So again, that there's groups of people who are their audience, and asking people to focus on their work for that particular audience is also challenging. Some people are also in a position where they really don't believe they have the control or the ability to change anything. And so, their pushback is, well, I'm not in a leadership position, so I can't change anything. That's a difficult one. So we touched on a lot of things. There's a lot of challenges. How do we, how do we get around those challenges? Some thoughts.
Let's see. First of all, I think we need to know who we want to affect the change with. So the majority of our students are teachers at some capacity, either to the kids, to adults, in corporate world, trainers. So they're teachers. So their audience, the thing that they want to make a difference is the kids, the people they teach. So that to me is where they need to start. And the teachers that tell me that they can't make a change or can't make a difference, what are they doing? All of those hours that they are in their classroom or their workspace with those learners. Of course they can make a difference. Now, can you change the curriculum content? Probably not. But can you change the way you deliver it? Probably so. When I was in the classroom, we had couldn't read all the way up to really advanced readers, same thing with math. So it was a little difficult at times to teach the whole group. So when I think of something like a blended learning where I could pull 3 or 4 kids and focus on this skill piece of content, I don't know what I really want to describe it as because I want to keep it kind of broad, but I focus on their needs. How about that? And I reach those needs, and then I go to another smaller group and I work on those needs. I think even though maybe our administrator or whoever needs to be informed of, I don't even know, do they need to be informed? But if we're teaching the content to the people that need it, the way they need it taught, we're making a difference. We're putting it out there. So I think the mindset of, oh, well, this is the stuff I have to do, and I have to do it this way. Why? We want to make a difference. You're there every day to make a difference. One of the things I used to do is shake my kids' hands. They could not enter the classroom until they shook my hand. Pre-COVID, but I did have hand sanitizer. And a lot of them were like, what are you talking about? Shake your hand. Yeah, you want to come in, you got to shake my hand, say good morning. These were my high schoolers. And eventually, after 4 or 5 days, they got the hang of it. So we either high five, slapped hands, shook hands. I don't think fist bumping was a thing back then. But at the end of the year, some of my kids, the ones that you wouldn't have expected, says, that was the coolest thing ever. I always knew I had to shake your hand or say hello to you. Some of my teachers never even said hi to me. So I made a difference. Super simple little thing. Nobody told me I didn't have to do it. And no one told me I couldn't let a kid into my classroom if they didn't shake my hand. Super simple little thing. And then relationship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Feedback and a trusted relationship, according to Hattie, is one of the most important things that we can do to help achievement. Well, you've talked about something I think that is so important, and I want to add a little bit to it. So this idea of blended learning is a wonderful concept, and now we call it blended learning, but 30 years ago, I call it, instruction, making people responsible for things and actually meeting the learner where they're at, according to Bruner's 4 principles of learning. So the blended learning opportunity allows us to meet learners in a variety of different ways and to shape things. And like you had mentioned, if you do have some learners who are at a different level or who need a bit more time, well, you might be able to group them and chunk them with another group. And then while this group is working through their part of the project, you might be meeting with another group. Or if you're online, maybe you've got this group in a breakout and you're talking to another group. So you have the ability to sort of take advantage of space and time and different levels and meet people and engage them where they're at. And it's really a different notion of really using the same content and curriculum You still are. That hasn't changed, but you're really looking at different ways to engage the learner and bring them into the learning process, as opposed to delivering the content to the learner and covering the content. So I think you also touched on something that I'm going to refer to is the reason that most people do what they do in terms of their teaching. They do what was done to them. That there's a tendency. And if you and I are of the age where we did sit in those rows, and now I was a bad enough student where they kicked me out of the roles, and so I was always in the principal's office. So, but I sat in a row there with other bad students, right? So yeah,
Disengaged students.
yeah, other disengaged students, right? Yeah. So you have this system where we've perpetuated a model for many, many years, and people come into the system and they believe they have to do what the system had done to them because they're now part of the system. And yet, ironically, most of these people were somewhat idealistic and they wanted to change things and improve things. And yet they fell into this model where they were doing what was done to them, because nobody really bothered in their instructional training or in their undergraduate studies or wherever to talk about the fact that if you want to help the learner to learn, well, change their thinking about learning.
Mhm.
If you want to actually change the learning environment, will change the approach to learning. This idea of choice and ownership and voice, boy, those are old ideas. I watched an old John Dewey video, and John Dewey has been talking about real experiential learning, project-based learning, social learning. All these wonderful things that people are talking about today are old ideas that are well established. We just haven't really done them very well, or when they are done, there's just pockets and we haven't really distributed it. So
It
a
takes
lot of
time.
it takes time, but I think there's also a level of uncertainty. And so I think what happens is that when people come into our program or most instructional settings, they're afraid to let people know that they may not be the expert that they want to be,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So what is that called? Imposter syndrome. There's a term for it now, right? So that notion, well, I'm not really the teacher and I really don't know what I'm going on, so I have to deliver the content in a really, really restricted, rigid way, because that's how I know, that's how everybody will know I'm a teacher, because I'm delivering content. So we have that tendency to fall into that. And so to move people away from that, we have to get them to start that change in thinking, that change in their approach. And they have to realize that the learning environment is much more dynamic than just the classroom or online. It combines many different factors, and all those factors, space and time, and different time, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, the management of that time. There's so many opportunities, and getting our learners to shift that thinking is that first step. And you have to make it safe. It's okay to fail, right? So the whole notion of failing forward. Now, those ideas are introduced to students in courses like 5302, we do address a lot of these ideas, but in the first couple of weeks, we have to get our learners over that blackboard hump, right? It's tough. It's tough.
Well, I also think too, if I'm taking a program online, I can do all my work on Sunday, or I can do everything on Saturday. And it really doesn't work out that way, because there's looking at a video and maybe looking at it again and then thinking about it. How does it connect to this article that I just read? So when they come in and say, this would be great, it'll be online, I'll be able to work all day, take the kids to the ball games, the dance, whatever we have to do, 10 o'clock at night, I'll be able to sit down and I'll do it on Saturday. I don't think that works either. Yes, you can fit it to your schedule. You can fit the learning in. However, I've had people do the live sessions from the soccer field. That's great. That part works. But that focus time, it takes more than 2 or 3 hours on the weekend to figure out what grad school is all about, and then what our program is all about. Waiting till Sunday at 6 p.m. to start an assignment. That's almost like death by choice, because it's not going to get ready. And then something's going to trip it up and it's not going to get submitted in on time. So scheduling your time, I guess, is the piece here. Even though it's all online, you get to pick and choose. There are a few things that you must do, like the session is at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. You must be there if you choose. I said, but after that, you have to make your own schedule. And maybe it's not understanding how many hours you need to put in.
You're addressing an issue that I think is something that you and I often take for granted, because I have been working online almost my entire academic career. And you and I have, revised a lot of the courses in this program online. We meet at different times. And sometimes we have an idea that is stewing. We've talked about it once, we've talked about it twice, we've revisited it. And then I
Yep.
send you, okay, here's the latest version of the course. And then I get a phone call from you saying, well, just drop the points on this one and here and do this over here. And but, oh yes, okay. Sometimes you and I are working on a challenge over weeks, right? And a lot
Months.
of people don't realize that the real world, especially the world of online learning, that's just the norm. You've got multiple iterations, you're revisiting ideas, and you can't fix anything quickly because there's so many moving parts, and you have to actually look at all the factors. And so,
Well, and it has to be put into play too.
yeah,
Rolling a course out online for the first time, there's gonna be some issue. I've yet to roll one. I've written a lot of online courses. I've yet to roll one out where the very first time it was implemented was 100% A-okay.
yeah, I've done hundreds of courses too, and in this latest ADL, guess the last 3 courses that I did revisions on, as soon as they went live, I'm changing the dates because for some reason,
Right. I mean,
messed up
that's
on the.
just the way it goes. Is that failure? I don't think so.
No, that's just the
I
real
think
world.
that's just how it goes. I mean, you can try to think of just about every possible scenario that could happen, and you're going to miss something because it's random's not a good word. It's ping pong. It's just there's a lot of moving parts, like you say. So it's part of the online event, and you want it that way. Otherwise, it becomes traditional school. Do this,
Yeah.
do this, do this, do this.
Yeah, we do want it that way, but we also want to help our learners and that people who are going to be listening to this discussion to recognize that the frustration, the angst, the annoyance that you might feel is always
Normal.
going to be there, and it's normal, right? That's something that I think a lot of students don't really appreciate. Um, there are times when I see that something didn't work out, or I have to edit something, and I go, oh my gosh, I've got to edit this in 10 different courses, and then I have to go to the master and I've got to fix it over here, and then I got to fix something else over here. The one error or the one problem has to be addressed in 3 or 4 different places, right? Because you've got, things are interleaved and they're interconnected. And
I
it's
think
one of those, this is going to take me time, but you suck it up and you do it. You find the right time to do it. You do it, you complete it, and you move on.
and I think that's part of how our program rolls. We start something here in the very first course, 5305. We develop it, we work on it, but it's not done. The next course, next couple courses, it comes back up. And then we have a PD course, it comes back up. And then we have a measurement course, it comes back up. I don't mean that in a negative way. It just comes back up. So it's not really this fix in the first course that you have. It's an overtime adjustment. It's a big, huge, wicked problem. And you're looking at different possibilities and you're growing with it as you grow through the program. So it's not something that is a one and done. It's not just this, oh, I'll just do this and bam, problem solved. It doesn't work like that. It's involved. It's looking at your learners, putting your learners in there, putting your adults in there, trying to get your administration to understand what you're trying, the shift you're trying to make, right? So that, again, there's all these moving parts. So whether it's behind the scenes or in front of the scenes or in your classroom, it's still kind of ebbing and flowing in the same way. You got to shift that thought. It's not, I go to Target, I'm a cashier, I check out people for 4 hours, I take a break, I come back, I check out people for 3 more hours, I go home. This doesn't work like that. There's almost like there's not an end point.
It is challenging for a lot of people, but the exciting thing that I am seeing, and you and I have the privilege of working with our students when they graduate, when they do the capstone course. And right now I've got our first group of ADL students going through the capstone, and I'm getting the, oh, Dr. H, I'm so glad I did this program because it enabled me, it gave me the skills and the ability to actually solve a lot of the problems we had as related to COVID and other things that everybody else couldn't deal with. And all of a sudden I became that one person in my department who actually was able to actually bring a level of normality and reasonableness. And we survived. Not only did we survive, we thrived. We were able to do this, we were able to do that. And because this program helped me to think about learning differently and approach learning differently, and I looked at the whole learning environment, I'm able to do X, Y, and Z. And so I'm hearing the benefits. And so if one of the big takeaways that we could sort of encourage people who are taking this in is that angst, that frustration, that challenge that you feel at the beginning, I refer to that as deeper learning. That's part of the learning process. That's part of getting used to deeper learning. And the skills and abilities that you gain through going through this process will transfer to so many other things and transfer to life in many significant ways. And I think it's important for people to remember that. But the challenge, though, at the beginning, and that's part of the reason we're talking about this, is how do we get that message to the people in the first couple of weeks? And so, I'm not lamenting this. We're having a conversation to figure out better ways to do this. And in this conversation, the wicked problem idea, guess what? That's the title for this talk, right?
What I actually started doing in both 5305, 02, and 03 is I meet the first week. We have our session. I kind of say there's X amount of assignments. They're due throughout the course. You'll find an amazing amount of information in each one of the weeks. I'd suggest starting at the top and going down. Make sure you add to the discussion area, get to know your peers, and then I don't meet week 2. I don't come back in week 2. I say we're gonna not meet next week, but we're gonna come back week 3, and I need your questions, your comments about, and then whatever the major assignment was in that time period. So whether it be growth mindset or the proposal, whatever it might be, I give them that whole, basically 2 full weeks to become one with Blackboard. And I don't get too many emails because I think they know that by the time I'm done, it's their job to explore. It's their job to kind of figure it out. And I wait, and then I come back in, and then we have our meeting week 3. And I start with, okay, I trust that we've all explored Blackboard. Are there any really difficult questions that you could not find the answer to? And usually I don't get any. And I'm sure part of that is because nobody wants to say anything. But I usually don't get any. And I said, that's great. So you found that, and I just go through a couple of things where each week is laid out. Now, don't forget, in week 1 is where you find the assignment that's due at the very end of the course. So I say that one more time. And then I go into whatever that main assignment, whatever the ideas are for that assignment. So that seems to be helping a little bit, but then I'll get some emails after that class about what should I do first? How should I find this? And I say, well, those are things you should ask out in the class session, because I promise you, someone else has that same question. You've got to get used to asking questions. So that's one way I'm trying to combat it. Because I know the first time I enter a new platform, oh, where's this? Oh, I like it so much better in this one. Oh, where's it over here, right? I mean, that's just what you do. Yeah. But the more you become familiar with where to click, when to click, what opens up, how it looks, how to submit, how do I post to the discussion? How do I respond to somebody? Do I start a new link? Like, how do I do this? The more you do it, the easier it becomes. So what if you make a mistake? What's the worst thing that can happen? You do it again? You try another way? I mean, all the worst things are learning. So it doesn't really, you just have to keep your emotions intact. Take a deep breath, walk away. So I meet the first week and the third week. I give them those 10, 12 days to become one.
That's an interesting idea. I think I'm going to have to maybe try that. It's too late for me to try that with this particular
Right.
group that I'm working with right now. But I actually do a little bit like that in the sense that I have I talk very briefly about what's happening in the course and point to those things, but I look at the bigger picture and I get them looking at some of those other ideas about learning. And so the emphasis is there. And so I use some of those key videos like the change of focus or Daniel
Mhm.
Pink's drive and the motivation. And so there's sort of key ideas that I want to sort of embed and have them focused on as they start to do those other things. So yeah, it's
But I
interesting. And the exciting thing is that, and this is something that I want to go back to what you said earlier on when people say, well, I have to deliver the curriculum. Here, you and I are working the exact same program. When we teach the same course, you're doing it slightly different than I am, and we're getting the same results, right? And that's a beautiful aspect about blended or online blended learning, in the sense that
Mhm.
when you move away from delivering content, when you move away from asking students what is the right answer, to giving the students choice, ownership, and voice through their own real projects, you can coach and guide people in your unique way. You're a different coach than me. You know, we're of the same era. You know, we're a little bit older than a lot of our students, but yet we have different styles in terms of our coaching. And
Mhm.
but we have the same goal, and we've gotten our students to the same end. So that's the
I, I
exciting thing.
I also think that's what helps in Blackboard is you come from this direction and I come from this direction. How we talk in those first couple meetings, how we play things out, you more about the learner's mindset, me more about relaxing through the system, it will be okay type of thing. Because I'm sure you hear what goes on in my class and then what I hear what goes on in your class through a few students, the way we complement each other coming from a different direction. And I think that that helps to ease them a little bit. The first week is always chaotic from their point of view. They're always like, I don't know what to do. It's my first master's course now. That's an okay emotion. You know, when I started my doctoral program, I was a little anxious. I was a little older. I'm like, what am I going to do with all these young people? Like, am I going to be able to relate? Like, you always have these insecurities that you bring out, but eventually you realize they don't matter. It's all going to be okay because our different approaches will all kind of massage with each other. And I think that's where we do blend well, but it takes time, you know, whether it be 1 week, 2 weeks, or a course. You just have to relax and go through the process.
And one of the things I hope our students are recognizing, I actually explicitly say this, that the things that they're experiencing, what they're feeling, and how we interact, how we coach and guide, we're modeling what we hope that they will do with their learners. And so I never lose an opportunity to point that out. So that is something that I think is one of the biggest challenges. I'm doing one of my favorite courses, the course 5313, dealing with learning theories and getting people to shift their perspective from a teaching philosophy to a learning philosophy.
Mhm.
And that's a big shift. Thinking, well, I'm a teacher. I teach. This is what I do. I am in control. I deliver the content. I shape and mold, and students do what they're told to do. Whereas, oh, I'm a learning facilitator. I create this environment. I provide opportunities for growth, opportunities to challenge students. I come alongside. I ask. I quiz. I tease. I poke. I cajole. Right. It's a very different perspective, and getting people to shift that perspective, I think, is important. What I've been really trying to do and trying to emphasize when I encourage students to look that way is I say, don't throw out the fact that when you need to be a teacher, you need to be a teacher. I'm not saying stop doing that. I'm
Yeah.
saying add the coach, add the mentor, add these things to your toolbox, so to speak. And that's another thing that I never used to say explicitly because I assumed that people would add this to what they're already doing. But there's a tendency for some people to go, oh, well, Dr. H said this. That means I've got to throw everything else out. What? No, hold on there. No. It's like using authentic learning opportunities or project-based learning is to change the focus. That becomes a context for learning, but you still have curriculum, you still have standards, you still have somewhat of assessment. Yeah, you've got all those pieces, but you've just got another context to help students make it more meaningful. And so that I think is something that I'm still struggling as to how to help students overcome that. And I think that just takes time. They have to recognize that they have to find that balance and getting,
Right.
or that tension between doing what they've always done and then introducing new things. So one of my favorite new terms is, I say, sprinkle the pixie dust of authentic learning on what you're currently doing. And maybe some of that pixie dust will rub off. I recently watched some, Walt Disney movies where they are sprinkling pixie dust. but that's actually part of it, right? And if we can bring some levity and some laughter into the environment and recognize that if we start to approach learning a little bit differently, if we engage our learners differently, if we give them even a little bit more control and they start to take responsibility, they start to see how important it is to own that problem and to solve a real world problem, that changes them forever. That you don't put that back in the box. Once you've released that, learners aren't going to give it back. They aren't going to give back the control once you give it to them, right? And once you recognize the power of that, it can grow. So there's a lot of interesting things that we've talked about here. Whew. Have we solved it?
We've put some groundwork out there. Some food for thought.
Yeah, a lot of food for thought. I have one more idea I want to bounce around with you. One of the things that I think we might be missing out on an opportunity in is that we do have a Facebook group, and we might not be promoting our Facebook group enough. And the reason is that if we could get students who are on their first course and students who are on their last course to come together and work together a little bit more.
It's like a mentoring program.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit more of an overlap. And so the reason, originally, Dr. Thibodeau and I had built the Facebook group, and we added to that. We've never really gotten that going to the point where we had that interaction. So I think it might be the case where you and I might need to be a bit more purposeful and maybe have some students come in as a guest in some of the sessions, and then have people meet in the Facebook group. What are your thoughts on that? Because I do this in another course, in another program that I work in, where I actually build this type of a mentorship. But it really takes so much effort, and if you're not diligent, it can fall away. What are your thoughts on this about using Facebook, or is there a better tool that we can use to build that mentorship?
In another program that I worked in, we actually used Facebook, and we had students that would volunteer to be mentors, and they would kind of keep the Facebook fresh, if you will. However, something that I've noticed the last several months, last several courses, I guess, not everyone is using Facebook. Not everyone is on. So what do we do in that case? That would be the only drawback. But these people that aren't using Facebook, they're not really using any social media. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're like off the grid, so to speak, but yet in an online program. I don't know. I think Facebook can do so many things for you, especially getting together, sharing those little ideas. I mean, I belong to a lot of Facebook groups that have helped me instrumentally. Our first Lego League has several Facebook groups, and I don't know where I would be without the little snippet videos that they put out there on how to program the robot to do this, or many STEM groups, high school level, middle school level, elementary level. I think there's a lot of value. I also hear the other side. Well, I don't like looking at Facebook because there's all the junk out there that I don't really want to pay attention to. Well, I get that. You don't have to. Just have groups and click on your group, and you can avoid all of that outside chatter. You don't have to, the friends can just be friends in the program. So I think it does have merit. The very first week I say, here's a group you really want to join in Facebook, and I put that group out there. And mostly because the ones that do a lot of chatting are the ones at the end of the program. and they're saying things that are very valuable for the ones at the beginning of the program. But the ones at the beginning of the program are a little afraid to go and connect, so they're not getting that. But I mean, you can scroll through and get it, but I think that would be very valuable to them.
Okay, so one of the takeaways then is that you and I are going to have to spend a little bit of time encouraging some of the folks a little bit further ahead to revive their participation level on Facebook. And so, yeah, there's always opportunities. There's always ideas. The opportunity to discuss these types of ideas, hopefully our students are going to see, not just in our programs, but who are other people who are taking this in, that these long form discussions, these dialogues allow people to explore ideas, reinforce, figure out what is working, what we can do better, and what changes we can make. And helping people to recognize that when you're building learning, when you're looking at changing the learning environment, it's an ongoing, iterative, long form process.
It is.
But it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort because I look around at graduates of the program. I look around at my boys and I look around at other people that I've exposed to this type of thinking. The world has turned into a busier, rougher, tougher place for a lot of people. And if you have the ability to solve a few problems and become a bit more stable and reliable where everybody around you might be losing their head, you're going to be okay. And I think that's a key thing. We want to help people change the world. We want to help change the world one learner at a time. And I think if we can help people to enter into this idea of looking at those wicked problems as opportunities to make a difference and an opportunity to not just improve something for yourself, but maybe those around you and maybe even a broader community, why not? Why not? And I think the more people who, if we could get that shift of focus and look at what problems we can help our community solve just a little bit, right? It could make a world of difference. And I'm seeing that. I know I'm seeing that in some of the communities that I participate in, and people who are using social media in interesting ways. I know a bunch of people are moving off of WhatsApp onto Signal, right? And Signal is that's an interesting tool that I'm going to encourage some of our students to take a look at. I've got a group of people that I'm working with. The only thing is before our discussion, I had to turn off my iPhone because, boy, the people, when they start to use that Signal app, it just ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Yesterday, I think
group, like a group chat.
Yeah, it's a group chat, just like WhatsApp, but it's slightly different, and it works great. Works on the laptop as well as on the iPhone. So there's all these amazing, wonderful tools that people can use. I'm surprised that more people don't use Slack, but then again, that's more of a corporate tool.
GroupMe.
Yeah, GroupMe. There's actually quite a few people using GroupMe.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that different tools are being used, and I think it's important. So we're seeing movement, and hopefully this discussion will help some students who are just getting going. And my goal was to have a bit of a discussion and maybe use this as one video that people can take a look at the beginning of the program and feel a little bit better about their angst and their frustration, and to recognize that, hey, wicked problems. You know what? Wicked, and wicked problems could lead to wicked solutions. So and wicked in the good sense in that regard, right? So yeah. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure to explore these ideas and to see how we can make a difference. And I think that's it for today.
All right, I loved it.